In the middle of the last century, these paintings or ones like them caused lots of excitement in the art world and had a great amount of influence on young art students like myself at the Boston Museum School. Fate had me chicken out of the starving artist life and settled me into the more stable and predictable life of a school teacher. In graduate school, a professor presented me with an assignment to develop a painting that would remove the responsibility of choice from the artist. He described two kinds of systems for this, one where the physical act of doing was the most important element, and a second where mathematics made the system more hidden. He showed us his own paintings, something like these simple grids with primary colors placed by picking numbers out of a hat. That system could produce an Ellsworth Kelly. Like him or not, the resulting paintings were, in a word used by my mentor, Agnes Martin, egoless. I dreamt up a system using a grid with vertical column width determined by the brush width and the horizontal rows determined by the space needed to make two strokes of my flat brush, as in the top illustration. I used aluminum paint and added measured amounts of enamel paint each time I made new strokes. This was my finished painting, and on unprimed canvas it measures 36 inches square. The X shape came out of nowhere and fascinated my teacher enough that he had me skip the rest of his classes and just continue to paint at home for the remainder of the semester. What a deal. My process became highly refined over time, resulting in the next two slides and several other huge panels that were hung in my thesis show at the Berkshire Museum in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. This piece measures 44 inches by 74 inches wide. I call the next one Apsu, which is what the Assyrian Babylonians called that place on which the earth floats and from which come all streams, rivers, oceans, knowledge, and all that is good on the earth. It measures 38 by 48 inches. I took this process to silk screen and did a series of homages to Assyrian Babylonian gods. They were colorful characters, but became too representational for me. You may recognize Apsu, Nergal of the underground, Shamash the sun, Sinanar the moon, and the ever-so-phallic head honcho Marduk. I found that I needed to create prints that would give me income and produce lots like these over the next years that sold well in coastal galleries. Some of you may even own a Liberty Graphics t-shirt with a dinghy image on it. 20,000 people own one. Fast forward to my retirement. At the age of 62, I had a veritable tsunami of creative energy and composed several big music projects. Invited to a residency program, I was urged by artists I met there to revisit my systemic painting roots. I came back with one choral piece and 40 paintings. These two paintings, accomplished at that residency, done with a combination of acrylic medium and watercolor, were accepted into the CMCA biennial in 2008. I was thrilled and had them framed, which cost a small fortune. So I began looking for a less expensive way to present my work. I moved on to working in canvas, which allowed me to experience scale and use larger brushes, bolder colors. My grid was made with chalk lines. The darker ones here are just when I loaded up with new chalk, nothing intentional, all by chance. This piece is 30 inches by 40 inches. Canvas allowed me to make my own stretchers, create a great variety of sizes, play minimally with composition, and use different width brushes. This piece, called Fissure, measures 39 inches by 55 inches. I'm always fascinated by the little white spots that didn't get paint. During the next year, I gravitated back to a highly controlled brushstroke and more reserved use of color. When a friend remarked, "I see you're doing landscapes now," it made me aware of how much a person's individual experience affects his or her perception of this kind of work. My final accomplishment that year was this incredible monster, 40 inches by 50 inches, thousands of individual identical strokes, after which my left wrist choked off all feeling to my hand, requiring carpal tunnel surgery and months of recovery. One day I looked into my waste paint bucket and thought, why not? This was my first small experiment on handmade paper with leftover paint directly out of the bucket. Suddenly I had started to lose control, and the most exciting part of my journey began. I love that little red blip, if you can see it. I often complain that juried shows tend to have titles like landscape, portraits, still lifes, and the like, not conducive to my kind of painting. I once found a juried show entitled From the Garden. I entered the yellow painting, named it Corn, and it was accepted. Strongly influenced by a trip to New Mexico, these paintings are all on standard 23 by 30 inch, 400-pound watercolor paper. I now make all of my own frames as part of the process of completing a painting. Current work reveals that I have let go of the rigid guides to the grid. I now eyeball all my horizontal strokes and completely destroy all vertical columns by arbitrarily using different width brushes in the same painting. My work changes now simply by chance with each new painting. I'm not terribly good at promoting my own work and don't seem to be able to find an interested gallery. My artist son tells me, just keep painting, don't worry about that. Store them in the barn. Next week is my 75th birthday, and I pity those who will have to pick up the barn when I'm gone. Thank you.